Connecticut is a well-known hotbed for Bigfoot encounters, and just last month, a story out of New London County made headlines when a witness claimed that he saw an enormous 8-foot-tall creature crossing a road near the Pachaug River in the early morning hours. So this week, I'm taking a closer look at exactly what this driver says he saw while making his way home to Rhode Island, and I'll also explore some of the other strange encounters reported around Pachaug State Forest, Old Mistick Village, and Norwich. Mysterious creatures disappearing into the woods, strange nighttime encounters, and even some bizarre reports of Sasquatch rummaging through dumpsters. Are these simply misidentified animals and local legends, or could something much stranger be roaming the forests of southern Connecticut? Let's dive into these Connecticut Bigfoot sightings right now. Hey, everybody, welcome to Odd and Untold, the podcast where we talk about all things strange and spooky. This week, I'm returning to Connecticut, one of my favorite places. I've done a lot of episodes about Connecticut, Bigfoot sightings, UFO sightings, but there's been a recent Bigfoot sighting out of the county of New London in Connecticut. It's southeastern Connecticut. This happened July 5th, so just a little over a month ago. Really good witness sighting. It made a lot of headlines, a lot of news reports. You've probably seen it all over the place. I wanted to hit this one, but there are other Bigfoot sightings in New London, so I definitely want to hit those. So let's get into this most recent one, and then we'll get into some more historical sightings from, not too long ago, but in the past. But this one is hot off the presses. Okay, so to get to this first story, close range road crossing sighting of a Sasquatch by a motorist at 1:45 a.m. on July 5th. That's 2026, so just 5 weeks ago or so, next to the Pachaug River, 14 crow miles east of Norwich. So it's near Norwich. This just happened. Like I said, this has been all over the news. I've had a lot of people sending me this story through Facebook Messenger or text. A lot of people, because they know I love Connecticut. I go camping up in northwestern Connecticut, but this happened in the southeast. Like I said, New London County. This was July 5th, a Sunday. Location details, it's all in the report here. There's GPS coordinates. I will link to all these. So if you guys want to check these out for yourself, it's all here. Nearest town is Voluntown, Connecticut. Nearest road is not far from the intersection of Wiley's School Road and Forge Hill Road, and observed. And the witness leaves his name. Like I said, he's been on the news, Kevin Klimas. And he says, I was in Voluntown, Connecticut, early this morning, Sunday, July 5th at 1:44 a.m. I had just left a visit with a friend who rented a cabin on Beach Pond off of Wiley's School Road. I pulled out of the long dirt driveway for the cabins and crossed a small bridge that is under construction. I believe this bridge is at the intersection of Wiley's School Road and Forge Hill Road. So he's not really from the area. He's visiting. He's going back to Rhode Island, but he knows where this happened. I opened my Google Maps app on my phone to map my route home in Westerly, Rhode Island. And I've done an episode on Rhode Island Bigfoot, and they seem to be more white in color. So I will link to that below so you guys can check that one out. I crossed the bridge doing between 15 and 20 miles an hour with one eye on my loading map and the other watching the road. This area is in the middle of the woods, super dark. I'd guess I went no more than 200 yards like this when I witnessed something jump into the road from my right, heading to the woods on my left. I had to hit my brakes to avoid a collision with this thing. Upon doing so, I witnessed a bipedal 8 to 8.5 foot tall creature swiftly crossing the road. It had coarse, matted, and greasy-looking long brown hair covering every part of its body that I could see. Its legs were shorter than its torso, and its arms literally hung down to right around knee height. Must have had an 8 to 9 foot wingspan if it fully outstretched its arms. Extremely broad in the shoulders, 4+ feet easy, thick with what I can only assume is muscle, and moving like on a mission. It never stopped, nor did it turn to look at me. I was only able to see a side profile of its head and face. The top of its head seemed to cone up slightly, and it had a jawline any pugilist would kill for. So a very thick jaw, like a boxer. Minimum hair on its face. It stepped onto the road, took another step, then a third step, which put it back into the woods on the opposite side of the road. Walked more like a human than any other animal. I was and remain dumbstruck. Took me a minimum of 60 to 90 seconds to regain control of my faculties and get my car moving again. Make no mistake, this was not a bear. This was a cryptid. I'm no longer a skeptic. I'm certain of that. Cool story. And I'm going to get into my thoughts on this. I just want to read the rest of this, and then there's some follow-up investigations here. There's a video, but I want to tell you guys all about this, and then I'll give my thoughts, and I have thoughts. Other witnesses, he says, I was alone, having just left my buddy's rented cabin on my way back home to Westerly, Rhode Island. He says he believes he remembers hearing other sightings in Pachaug State Forest, and we're going to get to another one that will be coming up next. Time and conditions, he says this was July 5th, 1:44 a.m. So it was like a July 4th Independence Day celebration, and he's going home after midnight. The only lights were those made by my high beams, and the weather conditions were dark and overcast. He says he just passed a bridge under construction over what I'm assuming is a brook or creek. It was too dark to tell. The remainder of the surrounding area is woods with a few scattered houses in the immediate area, which I would say was 150 to 200 yards past the bridge and heading back towards Route 165 and Route 49. The area I was in is less than a mile from Pachaug State Forest, I believe. It might actually be a part of Pachaug. So he's not really from the area. So he's giving his best guess when he's submitting this report to the BFRO. So very cool report. And there are two follow-ups here, a short one from BFRO investigator Mike Young. So let me talk about this one. And he says, I interviewed the witness 2 days later at the location. His description was accurate and honest. The woods around Voluntown have had significant Bigfoot activity. The BFRO conducted a private expedition nearby at Hopeville Pond State Park during the COVID outbreak. Away from the coast and Mohegan and Pequot casinos, the area is traditional New England, rolling hills, small villages, tree farms, and abandoned farms. The location was a narrow ravine with the road and Pachaug River nearby. The river is more of a brook at this point and feeds the beach pond, a resort community. And then we have notes here from BFRO investigator Matt Moneymaker, or Matt Pennypincher, as my dad calls him, jokingly, from Finding Bigfoot. If you've ever seen Finding Bigfoot, you know who Matt is. Who says, I also spoke with the witness a few times, but I did not visit the location in person. The witness is credible. He's not lying about what he saw. I could tell from the conversation. You will likely get that impression as well if you watch the short video interview embedded below, and I'm going to play a little bit of that in a moment. It was recorded by Mike Young on Wednesday, July 8th, so he was only there 3 days later. It was raining around Beach Pond on July 4th and into the wee hours of July 5th, and then a few more big storms in between on the 5th and the 8th. All that rain would have made it useless to look around for footprint impressions near the road. It's going to wash them away. Clear tracks would not have been visible even immediately after the sighting because of the ground around is a carpet of pine needles, all private land in the immediate vicinity, so you can't just go wandering around in these woods to see where it went, not without landowner permission. So investigating can be tough. A lot of times if the ground is too hard, you're not going to get any footprints. People are always asking, why didn't they look for footprints? Most of the time, the ground is not going to capture it. You need mud, you need really soft surface, snow, mud, to really capture good footprints. So I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, and he says, why did the sighting occur at this location on this evening? My informed guess, I would bet the Sasquatch was attracted to Beach Pond that evening because of the 4th of July fireworks. The Sasquatch may have been a few miles deep into Pachaug State Forest, but would have heard the explosions of the fireworks around Beach Pond, which may have sounded like gunshots in the distance. We know of a handful of incidents across the country where people deep in the woods were approached at night while setting off bottle rockets. So that's interesting to me because you wouldn't think that these things would approach loud noises that they thought were gunshots. But curiosity, who knows? He continues. Why would a Bigfoot be attracted to these sounds? It may sound like hunters shooting. During deer season, the sound of gunfire will sometimes indicate where a deer has been shot and eventually gutted. If the gut piles, and particularly the liver that Sasquatch want from a killed deer, again, I don't know if I agree with Matt on this. It's an interesting theory, but I also think you might wait a little bit until after the gunshots. You might wait until the animal is field dressed and then go back and just grab whatever's left if you're scavenging like that, instead of running towards active gunfire. It's a little bit of a stretch for me, but you know, we all have our opinions and we don't know who is right and who is wrong here. He continues, and this is interesting. There are 3 publicly posted reports in the BFRO database from the same county in Connecticut, New London. There are 22 unvetted reports from the same county in the internal BFRO database. So this really caught my attention because I've got a lot of feedback from people who hate the BFRO, who love the BFRO. and they have all their different thoughts about it. And they say, hey, I submitted a report and they won't publish it, blah, you know. And my thing is, yeah, they're not going to publish everything. They do seem to want to vet these reports. And I can't speak to their vetting process. I don't know which ones they pick and choose. A lot of people have said you don't find anything on here about portals or the woo type stuff. And I get that. If that's not their thing, they're not going to promote that. But that's their website. You know, I can't criticize them for that. It's their property. They can do what they want with it. You may not agree with that, but if you want those reports, create your own database. And with all the portal stuff, it is what it is. But I also wonder if a lot of these reports are just witnesses they couldn't track down, reports where there's not a lot of information. You know, I do UFO sighting episodes, and I use the New Fork website a lot, and a lot of those stories are like a sentence. Yeah, I was out 2 nights ago and I saw a weird object in the sky, and that's it. And it's, you know, they publish them, and they're not good stories, because what does that mean? What is 2 nights ago? Did you leave a date? What would the object look like? What time was it? What did the object do? What color was it? What shape was it? There's tons of missing information. So I do wonder if a lot of these reports are noted because it's like, hey, we have 22 other reports from this county, but if they're not detailed enough, or if the witnesses aren't cooperating with the BFRO, it might be sketchy to publish them. So I don't know, but I do think it's interesting that you have like these 4 published reports on the BFRO database from New London, but there's 22 more that we just might never see the light of day. So that is interesting to me. So before I get into my analysis, I do just want to play a little snippet of this interview with the witness, Kevin, who talks about his encounter. So I'm going to play that, and then I'll give my thoughts on this whole story, because I do think it's really interesting. So let us take a look at the video.
And I had my phone out to hit home on Google Maps, and I just saw something out of my periphery. So I hit the brakes right about here, and this thing just stepped into the road, 2 big steps, and it was gone on the other side. And I just sat there shaking. Arms down to its knees, like brown, matted, wet fur. No neck really, like head up to a cone. It had to be 8 feet tall. Yeah, like the thing that stuck was like the shoulders, where you could tell how wide the shoulders were. I mean, this thing was muscle.
Yeah.
But it was...
And you said it was chocolate brown?
It was like a chocolate brown, and it was darker patches where I'm assuming it was because it was wet. It had poured earlier. It actually hailed in some places in Connecticut that night. So, yeah, it was the craziest experience of my life. I've got a lot of people who believe me, and a lot of detractors at work are saying, oh, you must have been messed up. I don't drink. I don't party it anyway. I not in 15 years. So...
Okay, so a really interesting little snippet there. He's describing what he's seeing, and I agree with Matt on this. You know, and this is something that is so important to these reports is to kind of talk to the witnesses and not just read these accounts, because you get a sense from him. You know, and I've interviewed people, not for Bigfoot, my job, pretty much since I started working. My jobs have included interviewing people, either in human resources when recruiting people and hiring people for jobs, or my current role as far as interviewing children and families to investigate, to see if there's been child abuse and other things going on. I've learned to read people pretty well. So I know usually when my chain is being yanked, and when someone is being sincere. Is it 100% foolproof? No, but I think I'm a pretty good judge of character for the most part. Again, there are con artists. There are people who are really good at lying. I don't think this guy is lying. I think he's sincere in what he saw. The story tracks with traditional Bigfoot stuff. He says he was a skeptic and that he's like dumbfounded, and now he's kind of forced to admit that something is out there. Really interesting. Certain aspects of the story really click with me. One, he's talking about this thing crossing the road in like 3 steps, which we hear all the time. So it had to be tall, it had to be big. It's not a black bear on 2 legs crossing the road, and you see the road in the video. There's no way a black bear is doing this. Sorry, it's not a black bear. So what is the other option? A man in a suit, maybe a ghillie suit, maybe a hunter in a ghillie suit, maybe a man in a Bigfoot or gorilla costume trying to scare people, which seems a little silly. You're in the woods, it's nighttime, it's a holiday. I get it. You might be getting people from out of town and you're spooking them. But he's getting a really good look at this. He's saying it's 8 to 8.5 feet tall. He's getting a look at the face, the big jawline. Again, could it be a costume? It's certainly possible. I just don't think it's realistic because you'd have to have somebody in the costume who's 8 feet tall. And was it really 8 feet tall? I don't know. People are bad judges of distance and measurement and height. So is the 8-foot thing accurate? I don't know. But I think most of us could look at a person in the street and know that, oh, that person is probably over 6 feet tall. That person is really tall and that person's really short, whatever. We all have this, I don't know how short a person is. I can look at them and be like, well, I'm 6'1". They're definitely not 6'1". They're maybe a foot shorter than me, or that guy is super tall. He's at least a foot taller than me. So I can say he's maybe 7 feet tall. So I think this guy, Kevin, is seeing this creature and knows that it's abnormally tall. Was it 8 feet? Was it 9 feet? Was it 7 feet? I don't know. But I believe him when he says it was abnormally tall, which again rules out a bear, and it pretty much rules out a person. Again, unless you have some NBA player in a Bigfoot costume running around the middle of nowhere, Connecticut. No offense, it's just, this seems like a more remote area. I love Connecticut, so I don't mean middle of nowhere. I just mean not very populated here. It just seems very strange to me. So that's interesting to me. The other thing is that he says it never stopped, nor did it look at me. It never turned to look at me. It seemed like it was on a mission. And we hear this a lot too, where these things cross the road and sometimes they look at the car, sometimes they look at the person, and other times they're just like, I don't know if they're oblivious or they just don't want to acknowledge. It's really weird. But he's saying it just crossed the road. And I've had people in my comments say, oh, these things, they cross in front of cars because they're chasing deer. But there's so many of these stories where nobody ever sees the deer crossing the road. And a lot of times these things, they're not running. They're not running after prey. They walk across the road. They're just kind of walking with purpose. And sometimes they stop and look at the car. A lot of times they don't even stop. They'll just keep walking, but they'll turn and look. And other times they're just like laser focused on just crossing the road. I don't know what to make of that behavior. It could be chasing prey. Who knows? Maybe the person just didn't see the deer. I don't know. But this is really interesting. He says it was really muscular. He says he doesn't know if it was male or female. He didn't see breasts. A lot of this is in the video. But he says it looked muscular. And if this was a female, he doesn't want to run into a male because the male would probably be even bigger and bulkier and more muscular. But broad shoulders, long arms, crossing the road in like 3 steps. This is not a black bear. And he seems very credible. He seems very sincere about what he's saying. He's coming back to Connecticut to meet with BFRO investigators. Again, I don't understand why people would lie about this. Go on the news, get your name out there. I appreciate that he did all that, but just weird lengths to go for a hoax. So this one, I would say this is a good sighting. I like this one. I like that it made the news. We don't have a lot of good Bigfoot sightings in the news recently. I mean, they're out there, but this one really caught some traction, and I think there's a reason why. I think Kevin is a great witness. I think he's sincere, and I just think this is a great sighting. There's not a lot of hyperbole here. He saw what he saw, and it sounds very standard. It's just like this standard road crossing, but a big, bulky creature. He's saying it looked almost oily, but wet, and I think it was just because it was raining that night. Really, really good sighting here in New London, Connecticut. Okay, so continuing at Pachaug State Forest in New London, Connecticut, close range multi-witness motorist sighting of a Bigfoot in Pachaug State Forest near Griswold. And this comes to us from October 15th of 2019. So a few years ago, but same general area here. Nearest town is Griswold. Nearest road is Route 201 and Trail 2. And observed, they say, Griswold, Connecticut, off of 201, Trail 2 to Mount Misery, a Bigfoot crossed in front of us. 2 people on the road thought it was a deer coming through the woods, but no, it was an upright creature running. Passed over a gravel road trail. We were in a full-sized Kia Sorento. It was at least 4 feet higher than the SUV. This was in 2019, early October, around 4:30 p.m. This thing was huge and quick. It was dark brown, tall, and very wide from the side. 2 legs, definitely. Made a very big ruckus coming through the woods. Also noticed I could not see it anymore after it was about 40 yards into the woods. The only other witness was their aunt. Other stories. He's familiar with 5 other stories of people camping in the area. It's a campground. They're swimming. There's a walking trail. But he said at Hopeville Pond in the 1990s, another witness saw a Bigfoot family dumpster diving. And we're going to get to that. And when I was talking about Bigfoot sightings in Bucks County, a lot of people in the comments were talking about these things cannot be in populated areas, developed areas, apartment buildings, houses, restaurants. You know, they're in the deep woods. And I would reply in the comments that no, I've done a few stories over the years where people saw these things rummaging through dumpsters in the back of apartment buildings. And so there's a story here that is referenced in Hopeville Pond. There's no elaborate story. It's just kind of mentioned here offhandedly. But we're going to get into some stories later on in the episode where there is, you know, sightings of these things dumpster diving. Really weird. Time and conditions. He said it's New England forest, late autumn, clear, sunny afternoon. So it's not dark. It's not, you know, there's plenty of light. It's early fall, not too many leaves, pretty clear to see everything. Small, clear streams, blueberries in summer, meadows where people feed and hunt deer, trout stocked by the DEP. Closest house is a quarter-mile away. Hopeville Pond campground nearby, power lines nearby. We hear this a lot too. The power lines, railroad tracks, or water sources, streams, brooks, rivers, pond, lake, whatever. I mean, you all know what a water source is, but we hear that a ton in these sightings. So there's a follow-up investigation here by BFRO investigator Mike Young, who says the witness was very credible, excellent description, and appeared honest. Connecticut investigators have had private investigations in the area. So yeah, and then there's a long list of details here from the witness. So I'm just going to go over some of the more salient points here. He says the whole event took about 20 seconds, very long and quick strides on the creature, about 8 to 9 foot long strides. The noise was loud enough for him to stop his car. Saplings and trees were moving. So this thing is moving through the woods and making a loud noise. The hair color was dark brown, darker on the head and shoulders. The head was not proportional to the body. The face was flat with dark skin on the face, short hair on the head with a rounded scalp and no visible ears. The face was seen from the side. It was mostly flat. The eyes looked bigger than human eyes. There was no visible neck because the hair from the head covered it, and there was no beard that they could see. He says the shoulders were massive, 36 to 40 inches, extremely muscular shoulders, very rounded deltoids and shoulders. Looked like a male, built like a male, but no genitals visible. So again, people see these things and they get a sense, like, was this female? Was this male? And usually they'll talk about something more muscular and bulky and wider shoulders and then sort of thinner at the waist, you know, typical sort of muscular male humanoid figure. And there's more details here. I'm not going to go through all of them. You guys can read this. I just wanted to hit some of the more salient points, just to sort of show that what he saw does not sound like a bear. You know, it's big. It's running out of the woods, crossing in front of them. Again, a road crossing. Very strange, in the same area, Pachaug State Forest, sorry. So really strange. Same hair color, you know, this brownish hair color, wide, flat face, no ears. This doesn't sound like a bear. So again, you're talking a very tall man in a costume running around the woods. You're basically asking to get shot. These are rural areas. Like I said, these are not places with, you know, these are not residential neighborhoods. These are places where there might be hunters out, there might be hikers out who are strapped and have weapons on them. And you're 8 feet tall and you're covered in hair and you jump out in front of somebody, you're asking to get shot. Not because they're out there hunting for Bigfoot, but because they're terrified and like, holy crap, what is that? I'm shooting it first and asking questions later before it rips me apart. They don't know if it's a bear. They don't, but this does not sound like a bear. He's saying very tall, very wide, 2 legs, definitely. Made very big ruckus coming through the woods, large strides. Bears, I'm going to put up a bear again, standing on 2 legs, very short little stubby legs. And if you've ever seen a bear walking on 2 feet, they're usually like in a tutu at a circus. I mean, and they look like a 1-year-old learning to walk. They're just very unsteady. And those are bears that are trained. In the wild, they don't really do that. So very, very strange, but a really good encounter. Again, not tons of detail in the initial report, but lots of detail in the follow-up. So you guys can click on that if you want to read that. I just went more over the physical stuff. They talk about the buttocks and everything, and I don't need to talk about Bigfoot butt cheeks. Sorry. So let us move on. So our next story, possible close encounter behind a home near Old Mistick Village. This happened in August of 2016, so summer. New London County, Connecticut. Nearest town is Old Mistick. Nearest road is Route 27. And the witness says, I had a Sasquatch hiding in the bushes in a swamp behind my home from me stalking 2 deer. It was less than 20 feet from me. It had an arm 4 feet long with jet black hair hanging down 3 or 4 inches. I turned to make sure my back door was closed. I turned back and it was gone. We've been hearing whoops and wood knock type sounds all summer. He says, I just taken out my garbage. In the past, I've heard wood knocks and whoops. This was about 5 p.m., warm and clear. So it's still light out. It's clear. He says there's a large swampy area at the bottom of a hilly wooded area near my backyard. So again, water source, swamp. Interesting. And there is a follow-up investigation here by BFRO investigator Tim Vogel. The initial report is short, but this one adds a little bit more detail. And he says, after a number of emails and phone conversations with this witness, his encounter, I determined that his sighting is unique in a way because it is located very near coastal Connecticut and just on the outer fringes of the local settlement. So I'll show you guys a map here of where this is. It's New London is the southeastern corner of Connecticut. So you kind of have Long Island Sound right to the south of it. You have, Long Island is right there, and Rhode Island to the east. Located on private property and abutting a headwaters and swamp literally in the backyard that leads to a local river is where this happened. The landscape is broken up with scattered houses, swamps, creeks, and woods. There are a few large roads in the area too. Around 5 p.m., his dog started barking and wouldn't stop. He got up and went to take out the trash and see what the dogs were barking at. He got the dogs, put them inside, and came back out to check the yard. There were 2 deer that had just ran past where he was standing. So I mentioned this earlier, that with these road crossings, people theorize that they're chasing deer, which I don't disagree with. It's just that sometimes they cross the road very sort of nonchalantly. And if you're chasing deer, you're going to be chasing. You're not going to just be kind of walking across the road. Anyway, he says that's when he saw it about 20 feet away. He said it was a large arm covered in jet black hair, 3 to 4 inches long, pulling on small cattail type plants. It was mostly hidden by a large clump of beach grass type plants in the swamp. All he saw was a long 4-foot skinny arm from the shoulder down to the fingers. So he's saying fingers. He said the hand was about 12 or 14 inches long, palm to the end of the fingers. So I have a pretty large hand. I would say from the tip of my fingers to my palm is maybe 7 inches. So that's a big hand. I asked how many fingers did it have? He said he didn't count, but other than being extremely long, it looked normal. He could see the crease lines in the long, dark black palm, and fingers looked long and skinny. At that moment, it made a loud whoop sound, and there was a response from just down the swamp a little further. Realizing there might be 2 of them, it freaked him out. He turned away to check his house, and he made sure his door was shut and looked and turned back to watch it, and it was gone. There's a history of loud noise from the swamps as well as wood knocks and whoops that have been heard all summer. He's also said there's been activity like this since 2014. He has since bought a trail cam and will try to get some images. So I'm a little on the fence about this one for perhaps obvious reasons. One, he's not seeing the full creature. I tend to enjoy and prefer the eyes on the creature. If you're seeing the full thing, you can say definitively this was walking on 2 legs. It was swinging its arms. You can maybe see the face. You can see that it is human shaped. Here he's only seeing an arm. And typically I would throw this story out. I wouldn't even cover it. But there are some aspects to it that make me wonder, one, what else could this be? a bear. Bears are going to eat things. Bears don't typically use their paws to pick plants or berries, or they're not dexterous like that. They have no dexterity. They're claws. I mean, they may use claws to dig, to move things. They can move a tree log, but very clumsy movement. They're not doing fine movements like picking things off of plants. They're going to use their mouth and snout for that. Two, he's saying he saw fingers, not claws. He's seeing fingers. He's seeing the creases in the hands, like you can see creases in my hands. He's saying the skin was dark, which tracks with a large primate. So very interesting. The long hair. It's a hairy arm. There's not a person. What else could it be? There's black bear there. A deer is not going to use its hoof to do something like this. The other thing is the whoops. And again, I typically don't like vocalizations because people will hear these things and they say, oh my God, that was freaky. It must be Bigfoot. There's tons of other things in the woods that make ungodly sounds that are just purely normal and known to nature. Bobcats and foxes and fisher cats and all sorts of things. Pine martens will make ungodly sounds. And if you don't know what they are, you're going to think, oh my God, that's Bigfoot. So if you're not seeing what's making the sound, I don't understand the jump to, oh, I can't explain it, so it must be Bigfoot. No, you just don't have that experience of hearing a fox screaming in the woods at night and saying, oh, that's a fox. But you're seeing this, and then you're hearing the whoops, and then you're hearing a return whoop. Interesting to me. Again, I'm still on the fence about this one. I'm not saying he didn't see Bigfoot. I just don't know if I can say I like this sighting as definitely Bigfoot. The other two, yes, I think you're seeing eyes on the creature. Either those people are lying, which I don't think they are, or they saw Bigfoot. It's not a man in a costume. It's not a bear. This one, I don't know. It's just the arm. So without the rest of the figure to sort of fill in the blanks, I don't know if I can definitively say this is Bigfoot, but it sounds like it could be. And not every sighting you're going to see everything. If this thing's trying to hide and is trying to pick something without being seen by the house that is right there, it might do exactly that. An intelligent primate is going to hide and just stick its arm out, because an arm is much less likely to be seen than a full body. So really interesting. Not sure where I stand on this one, but let me know what you guys think of this one down below, because this is like a 50-50 story for me. All right, so the last sighting from the BFRO website, I have a few more coming up after this. A possible nighttime sighting while walking dogs near Norwich. And dogs, I meant to mention this in the previous story, but pay attention to your animals. When they are acting differently or alerting you to something, pay attention. And it doesn't mean it's Bigfoot. It's just, but if you're in the woods and your dog is afraid to go down the path, don't go down the path, because it doesn't mean it's Bigfoot. But maybe there's a bear with cubs. Maybe there's a pack of coyotes. Maybe there's a guy with a gun. Doesn't mean it's Bigfoot, but pay attention to your animals. And this one talks about dogs as well. This was in the summer of 2005, New London, Connecticut, Norwich, and observed. So he says, I was talking with my sister in the spare room. She and her kids were spending the night. Her kids were sleeping, and she was just getting to bed. My two dogs were barking outside, so I decided to take them for a walk, since I figured they wanted me to take them out of the cage and do their business. I went to the backyard and opened the cage, but before I let them out, I placed a leash on their necks so they wouldn't run around and make trouble. Good idea. They were barking more than usual, like when company arrives in the driveway, but there was no one there. I went to the front of the house and got to the street. I noticed that the bushes in the front of the neighbor's house were moving and thought it might be a deer. So this sounds very much like the previous story. As I kept walking, I looked back to the bushes with curiosity and noticed a figure walking from the bushes towards the back of the neighbor's house. Their entire front and backyard was lit due to a full moon, and I could see a human shape going towards the back slowly, almost like hiding. It was weird because I could see the reflection of the moon on its entire body, as if it was wearing something that reflected the light very well. I turned around with the dogs and went down the hill towards the end of the street. I kept looking to the left, since I knew that whatever it was I saw, it wasn't human, had to cross an opening across the other neighbor's front yard to escape into the woods. As I approached the mailbox of the last house of the dead end, I kept looking to the house on the left. Their driveway went uphill. The full moon illuminated the driveway very well. I stopped and waited about a minute. The dogs started barking even more. Then I saw something running on two legs across, and the dogs wanted to go after it. The chain almost slipped from my hands, and they were pulling so hard. The thing ran across and went into the trees. The entire body had what appeared to be hair all over. I couldn't tell whether the fur was dark gray or brown. I'm leaning more towards brown, but everything else was as clear as day. I then thought to myself, if this was a thief dressed in a monkey suit going from yard to yard through people's properties, why then wasn't he smart enough to wait until I left with my dogs to run across? Which is a good question. And if there was a practical joke from someone, that guy must have had guts of steel to listen to mad barking dogs and still run. Because yeah, somebody could let their dogs go and be like, hey, there's somebody creeping around the neighborhood. I'm going to let my dogs go take care of this guy. Besides, it's a crime to trespass through multiple houses' yards, especially so late at night, just for a joke. But again, criminals, pranksters, they don't always pay attention to the law. So it's not like you have a law and it makes it impossible. It's just, maybe stupid to do this because, again, people have weapons, they have dogs. This guy could have easily been caught going through people's yards. I told my sister the next day about it. She remembered the unusual loud barkings of the dogs, and she confessed she felt a little concerned about it. So again, she's paying attention to the dogs being a little different. Like, why are they going so crazy? I'm glad she believed me. I didn't tell my parents, though. That's the first and last experience I had with something I couldn't explain. No other witnesses. It's just him and his dog. He said he's not aware of any other stories. This is why I decided to do a search online for Bigfoot in Connecticut and found this site. I see other people have seen it here in Connecticut too, just like me. So yeah, I've covered Connecticut numerous times, as I've said. He says this was around 11 p.m., full moon, no clouds, and I could see the stars. So let me talk about the follow-up investigation, and then I'll give my thoughts on this one. So the follow-up investigation is conducted by BFRO investigator D.A. Brake, who says a 40-minute phone interview conducted with the witness produced the following information. And I'm just going to drill down on this a little bit too, because it's a little lengthy. But he's saying the initial sighting in the neighbor's yard lasted about 10 to 15 seconds. He was about 25 to 30 yards away. So not super close, but close enough where you can kind of see, all right, this is a human-shaped figure. He's estimating the height at like 6 foot tall to 6.5 feet tall. He used the neighbor's bushes as a reference point. So this is not a super large creature. Like I said, in the previous stories, they're talking about 8 foot tall. They're saying this looked large. In this story, the witness is sort of, even in the beginning, he's thinking, is this like a thief? Is this a prankster? So it's human sized, at least. It's definitely human shaped, but he's thinking this is a person initially. So the witness continued walking the dogs, eventually sees this figure emerge from a backyard of the last house on the street. It ran with its arms swinging to the side in a parallel direction to the witness across a grass lawn clearing towards a wooded area immediately adjacent to the dead-end street. So it's running into the woods. It's in these yards, runs into the woods. He describes the animal as having a head profile similar to a human with a medium body build and fluffy dark colored hair. So this thing's hairy, human-like. Didn't hear any vocalizations, no unusual odors. He's just seeing this thing walking around the neighborhood. So this is another one I'm a little on the fence about. I don't know what to make of this one. It's human shaped. It's human sized. Like I said, I'm 6'1". So I'm not at any extreme, I'm not super tall where people are going to look at me like, oh my God, you're freakishly tall. So if I was wearing a gorilla suit, I would probably look about, between 6 and 6.5 feet tall. He's saying it was covered in hair though. So his thoughts are this is a thief who's maybe dressed in dark clothing, or it's a prankster in a suit going from yard to yard, which again is a little odd to me. I think if someone is going to hoax, you're going to have the roadside sighting, the road crossing. I don't even think you can have the road crossing. I think so you can have somebody kind of popping out of the bushes and, oh, look at me, I'm Bigfoot. And they're not going to risk getting hit by a car. They're not going to risk getting shot. And going into people's yards in a rural residential community is a great way to get shot. Have the police called, have the police shoot at you. Really silly. Maybe a thief, who knows? Maybe a thief wearing a gorilla costume or a Bigfoot suit. I don't know. It just seems very strange. He's getting a decent look at this thing, but there's nothing about it that screams cannot be human. Again, 8 feet tall, crossing a road in 3 steps, not human. This, it could be a human. what are the, and I've talked about this in other shows too, probability versus possibility. Anything's possible. It is possible that a Star Destroyer from Star Wars warped into our galaxy and dropped off Chewbacca in this neighborhood. Is that possible? Why not? How probable is it? It's not very probable. So is it possible this was a man in a suit? Sure, it's very possible. More possible than I think in the previous stories, but I don't think it's very probable. I just don't think you have somebody dressing like that. If you're going to be a thief, you need to get in and out of places very quickly. You're not going to wear some cumbersome monkey suit and with hair and not being able to see very well. You're going to dress like a ninja. You're going to dress very sparingly so that you can move quickly. A prankster, perhaps, but you would think then that you're pranking one particular house. I don't think you're going to do that, and then you have neighbors calling each other and, hey, Bill, I see something in your yard. Oh, let me get my shotgun and go say hello. Very, very silly thing to do. Again, not out of the realm of possibility, but just foolish if that's what it is. So again, very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this. So leave a comment and let me know what you think of this story. Okay, so I promised you guys a few more stories about the dumpsters because this does come up a lot, and I don't know what to make of that. I do think that, if you have bears wandering through neighborhoods, why not Bigfoot? If they're hungry, if they're desperate enough, they might come out at night and try to go through a dumpster to get some easy food. Again, how likely is it? Probably not too likely. But this one comes to us from the subreddit Connecticut from user Tight Discipline 234 7 months ago. And they say, when I was a teenager in Norwich, I saw a tall, dark, hair-covered humanoid that would come out of the woods around dusk and pick through our apartment's dumpster for food. Any sign of people or noise, and it would bolt back over the chain-link fence and run down the hill deep into the woods. But it would often leave stacks of flat river rocks near the dumpster or near the trails back in those same woods. A nearby neighbor used to try and photograph people coming through his yard at all hours, but never got anything substantial with his early 2000s camera. It creeped my sister out to where she wouldn't take the trash down to the dumpster, so that became my job, and that's how I got to see it. So this one, again, there's not a ton of information here. He's saying tall, dark, hair-covered humanoid coming out of the woods around dusk to pick through the apartment's dumpster for food. I don't know what to make of this one. This could easily be a person. He's saying a neighbor used to try to capture people going through his yard. So this may be like homeless people, community. Maybe there's a camp back there. It happens often. A lot of times people in the homeless community will live nearby to one another. They'll set up like little encampments. And I talked about this last week in my Urban Legends episode with Cropsy, that when the Willowbrook school shut down here on Staten Island, right next to the school, like a camp sprung up of people who were sort of displaced, people who worked there, people who were students there. They had nowhere else to go. So they sort of formed this little homeless community with tents and shelters in the woods right next to where the school was. So very possible that this was a person. I don't know how old this witness is. Just weird that this thing would jump over a chain link fence. It sounds like something a person would do. Leaving the flat river rocks, again, it could be Bigfoot, but it could just be a person. It could be a mentally ill person. It could be a homeless person. I don't know. Little on the fence about this one, but you would think that maybe the first time this witness saw something, or his sister, they'd say, oh my God, that kind of looks like Bigfoot. But if it's happening frequently, you'd think you'd get better and better looks at it and eventually say, that's just a man like wearing rags and it looks like hair. I don't know. So again, let me know what you guys think of this one. But I just wanted to talk about it because it is in Norwich, Connecticut, and it does reference the dumpster diving that we do hear that these Bigfoot creatures sometimes do. It's usually in a less populated area than this sounds to be. Like I said, usually behind like a restaurant with woods to the back. I don't know though. So let me get to our last story of the evening. All right, so our last story of the evening comes to us from Reddit. The subreddit is Bigfoot from Myoptic Visions. That's the username. 6 days ago. And this is in response to the original story from Kevin, who says he saw something there, Pachaug. So this Myoptic Vision says, sounds like a real sighting to me. So he's describing the first story we talked about tonight. He described pretty much what I encountered several years ago. I see posts and videos. Most which look like bears. I can tell because bears don't have the same body. The one I saw had a really broad shoulders and stood rather squarely and upright. So again, I'm going to throw that picture of a bear standing upright here. There are no shoulders. So when people see these broad shoulders with the head on top, they're not seeing a black bear standing up. They continue. It also had arms that hung down to its knees and a long torso, very large. I would say it was at least 8 feet tall. So again, maybe not exact, but they know this is abnormally tall for a person. They know what 6 feet tall is roughly, and you can gauge that this is taller than 6 feet by a lot. 6 or 6'1", no one's gonna be able to tell, just by looking. But 6 foot versus 7 foot or 8 foot, like, people are gonna know. He says, I got a really good long look at it. It was actually in a parking lot behind a bank next to a dumpster of a Mexican food joint that's usually full of food waste. It's close to a very wild area where there are also a bunch of big farms and older growth trees. Both me and my dog were also just dumbstruck. All I could do was just stare at it. It wasn't very nice either. It kind of growled and glared at me with these huge yellow eyes. Its face was sort of like a gorilla, but kind of flatter. It had a large forehead, big nostrils which were flaring, I guess because it was breathing heavy and angry. The skin on its face was almost black. It had its cheeks puffed up like its mouth was full of food. The thing moved very fast. First, it came up to the tall chain link fence and slammed its arms down on the top of it and bent it. So again, chain link fence, just very similar sort of things here. I thought it was going to jump over and attack us, but after the bar bent and the fence rattled, it backed up. Then it headed back across the parking lot over one of those wooden log-like fences back into the woods with astonishing speed. I noticed how it walked. Its feet were longer and wider than a human and seemed to be like double jointed. They flexed and it looked like it almost slid as it walked, and its knees seemed to bend both ways a little. It crossed that little lot super fast. The fur was a thick brownish gray color that seemed to mimic the bark of like a white oak. I could understand how it could blend in against the trees. Only thing is that it smelled really awful. It was very strong, pungent, like something really rotten. It was the first thing to me and my golden retriever noticed before we ever noticed it. So I wonder if it's the creature or the dumpster they're smelling, because dumpsters can smell pretty bad. The dog looked at me like, what is that smell? Once it climbed over the fence into the woods behind the gas station, I thought it was going to come around and attack us, so he took off in a hurry. We were in this lot where they tore down this old apartment building compound. We were standing on the edge of this hole where they had dug up the foundation, a pile of dirt and rubble right next to the fence and looking down into the parking lot. So I was like 20 feet away from it. The smell was definitely not the dumpster because we could go down there often. It was a decent-sized lot and was overgrown with tall grasses. Okay, so that witness was not in Connecticut. That was in Maryland. But I wanted to include that because it kind of corroborates the dumpster diving thing. And in his story, he gets a much better look at this thing. He's seeing the face. He's seeing the nostrils flare. He's seeing the yellow eyes. I don't know what brings these things in. The initial story in Connecticut with the dumpster prior to this one, I think that could be a human. He's not really giving a lot of detail. Maybe there is more detail that he just didn't write out. But this story, there's a lot more detail. But it's not in Connecticut. I just wanted to include it because it does sort of corroborate the dumpster diving behavior that we hear with these creatures. So just an interesting tale. And I have previous episodes, I'll try to link to those below, where there's dumpster diving with these things. And it's just weird that people will come out and see these things and they know it's not a bear. People know what bears are. If you see a bear going through a dumpster, you're going to say, oh my God, there's a bear going through a dumpster. If it's a person, you're going to say, oh, there's a person going through the dumpster. I don't know why people would mistake either one of those things for a Bigfoot going through a dumpster. A dumpster is usually in a fairly well-lit area. Even if it's night, there's usually a light there, to see a street lamp or something that illuminates the area because people are taking their trash out at all times of the day. So very strange. But that one is not Connecticut. So I just wanted to be clear about that. But it does corroborate that dumpster diving sort of thing. So a little side trip into Maryland there. Okay, everybody. So there's some more Bigfoot sightings from Connecticut, New London. Love these stories. The first few are like really, really good stories. I just think you got eyes on the creature. There's really no wiggle room here. Either they saw Bigfoot or they're lying. And I don't think people come on here to lie on the BFRO website to lie. I mean, of course, some people probably do, but you watch that video of Kevin and he does not seem like a liar to me. He seems very sincere, very authentic. I tend to believe him. I think he saw what he says he saw. There's no hyperbole there to try to get into the newspapers. It's just, hey, I saw this thing. I was a skeptic and now I'm not so sure. He's dumbfounded, he's dumbstruck. So really interesting. But we have to question these things. Was the arm coming out of the bushes really Bigfoot? Did it just look like a hand? Did this guy just mistake a bear, trying to knock something off of a bush as a Bigfoot? We don't have enough information. So we have to question that. Did you really see fingers, or could this have been a claw? We have to ask these questions. Was this Bigfoot going through the dumpster, or was this just like a homeless guy in the neighborhood hopping the fence and trying to get some free food? Tall, what does that mean? Was he 6 feet tall? Because some people are going to consider me tall. I'm 6'1". I'm tall, but I'm not abnormally tall, where somebody would say, oh my God, that's a Bigfoot going through my dumpster. I'm going to say, hey, there's a guy going through my dumpster. So we have to question these things. And I do. So, but good stories tonight, I think. And just the dumpster stuff is really weird to me, but we hear this a lot. And again, I think people would know what's going through their dumpsters. Wearing this cool t-shirt tonight. This is Bigfoot sitting around a campfire. It says, a guy like me is hard to find. It's from Knoebels. Rebecca got this for me. And I guess a guy like me is hard to find. She didn't find me for 47 years. So now she found me and she got me this awesome t-shirt. So thank you, Rebecca. Until next time, everybody, embrace the weird. Let me know what you think about these stories. They're pretty cool, but I always love the feedback. I love constructive criticism. The last few episodes, you guys have been leaving tons of comments, personal stories. So please, you can leave them in the comments. If you don't want them public, you can shoot me an email at jason@oddanuntold.com. I'm happy to chat with you, feature your story on the show if you don't want to come on the air, or just keep it private if you just want to let me know of sightings or legends in your area. And until next week, everybody, rock and roll.